So welcome to our Tuesday teacher feature. The teacher feature is basically a way for me to share about all of the amazing people who have taken the Asanas for Autism and Special Needs trainings with me and get an opportunity to share the wonderful work that they're doing out in the world. The people who come to the trainings have a lot of passion and desire to bring the benefits of yoga and mindfulness to children of all abilities and just to help children build resiliency. So I'm really excited to get a chance to introduce my lovely guest today. This is Mallika Iyer, and Mallika is a pediatric physical therapist. She is the founder of Physi-Asanas, her yoga with children, and she's a mama of 2 adorable children. And she is also part of my faculty. So Mallika is the pediatric physical therapist that leads the anatomy trainings in both the level 2 95-hour children's yoga teacher certification, and will be leading the pediatric, or rather the anatomy training in the level 3 yoga therapy for youth training that's going to be coming up in October online. So Mallika, welcome.
Thank you, Shani. It's great to be here. And
yeah,
excited
to have you on. I would love for you to share a little bit about your work that you currently do right now. I know you're at home with your kiddos, and I have some things that I want to have you share about, some wonderful things that you're doing. But I would love for you to share about your work with pediatric physical therapy and how you are integrating what you learned in the level 1 and level 2 trainings with yoga. How are you integrating that into your physical therapy practice?
Like you said, I'm a pediatric physical therapist, and just to give an idea about the background of the settings, different settings that I work in, I do some amount of early intervention work, where I work with the birth through 3 years old population, and most of these children I work with in their homes. So a lot of caregiver training and working with the children to help them achieve their developmental milestones and achieve function in their day-to-day home environment. That's one of the settings. And I also work with the school, preschool and school age population. So I work in the Del Mar and Encinitas School District as a contract PT, and that's through Physi-Asanas. Here I work with from 3 years old, from kiddos from 3 years old to up to most of my kids are elementary age kids. So anywhere up to 12 years old.
Okay.
And that's the major, population that I work with. I also work with a few adult patients who have had stroke or hemiplegia, because I have the neurodevelopmental treatment training, which is kind of like a functional approach to treating clients with neurological deficits.
Wonderful. And what is that called again, the certification that you have?
Yes, it's called neurodevelopmental treatment, so NDT.
NDT, yeah,
yes.
Wonderful. So you work a lot, you said, in early intervention, and it's wonderful that you are also working in the schools. So what are the ways in which you are integrating the yoga practices into your pediatric work?
Right. So there's just I feel like there's just so much overlap between the yoga and the therapy world in terms of what therapists do. Being like pediatric PTs and OTs especially, we tend to have to constantly think out of the box to kind of make activities, and you can't go and tell a child, oh, let's do this, let's do leg raises 3 times. They're not going to have to do it. So it's kind of, we have to think out of the box to kind of make it more creative, more incorporate into more play-based, and into create themes for them to work on. And this is where I find the yoga training, that especially the level 1 and level 2 training that I took with you, to be really useful. Like
Mm,
I'm able to create like themes, like my sessions are based on certain themes. Like, okay, I'll tell the kids today we're going to go to the zoo, and then
mm,
we'll go through different poses, and I will tell them, oh, let's see what would you see at the zoo, and they'll be like, oh, we'll see a flamingo, and then we'll go through a flamingo pose.
mm,
I might put in some poses there, for example, and then say, let's do a bear crawl, and you go through the bear crawl. So kind of getting them to participate in the session and doing what they need to work on to get to their goal, while incorporating a lot of these yoga poses and animal movements, and
mm.
a lot of these into my regular sessions.
Yeah.
Um, it's
I-
just very helpful to get them to participate, get participation from them. And there's research that says that children and even adults, they do so much better with learning something when it's something that they're interested in, or there's something that's they're willfully participating in, versus it's more active learning versus
Yes.
passive learning.
And don't you find with the practice of yoga that it's like stealth goal achievement where the child doesn't even know there's a goal that
Yes.
they have to make? And I think with so many of the children, especially that you are working with,
Mm-hmm.
they have so many times in their life where they have these goals that they have to achieve or these benchmarks that they have to make, and they have this
Right.
pressure of feeling like they have to be able to
Yep.
perform. And the beautiful thing about yoga is that they just get to be joyful, they get to connect to that inner spirit, their playfulness, and they don't even know that they're actually achieving milestones or goals.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like they're working without realizing that they are working.
Mm,
And even with the younger population, like you mentioned, like, a lot of these yoga poses are actually just developmental positions that the children go through as a part of their normal development through infancy and childhood.
yeah.
For example, like the cobra pose is basically weight bearing on their forearms, like, right? So
Mm,
things like that. So everything that we do is basically, I feel like it's yoga in some way or the other, and
mm,
that's what I love about it. And another thing I love about it is how it helps with like the self-regulation, especially with students who I work with in schools. A lot of them have so much of these behavioral issues.
mm,
It may be caused by, there might be any number of reasons for that, but it just helps so much. What I learned from level 1 and 2, being able to apply what I learned to helping the children with like self-regulation, like um,
mm-hmm.
and like I got the yoga toolkit, and that's another great resource that I'm able to use in
Yeah.
my sessions with the visual cues. Like so for example, for the self-regulation, I use a lot of those emotion cards
Mm,
that are there
mm-hmm.
in there. And it even lines up greatly with the zones of regulation
Yeah.
that occupational therapists use in their treatment too.
Yeah.
So, without crossing over, without stepping over my boundary of like, that's defined by physical therapy, I'm still able
Mm,
to kind of incorporate some of these strategies into my PT sessions just to prepare the
yes.
students a little bit more, make them more open to receiving the,
Yeah. And
and
we know
participating.
self-regulation. I mean, that's really the foundation to receiving anything, right? Being able to learn or being able to work with you in their PT sessions, that if they're not regulated, then that's really going to interfere with them being able to make any movement forward or access any information really. So self-regulation component is so important. So
Right.
when you talk of using the visuals, I know you do a lot of telehealth.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to us a little bit about, we're in a time right now where so many people are now using technology, right? With this pandemic,
Right.
it's a bit of a learning curve for some people, but this is something that you've been doing for some time now.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share a little bit about how you integrate the yoga into a telehealth session?
Yeah. So I actually love this telehealth, and I'm lucky that I have been doing it for the last couple of years. So For me, I feel like it's easier to do that versus distance learning and like sending people just a bunch of materials to that they could work on at home versus having like an active session where I am meeting the child with their caregiver. And then also it brings in, you know, involving the caregiver also into the session, so they are able to also try some of the things that we're working on, and it helps with carryover, you know, when I'm not with the child. So
Yes.
and it's greatly helpful because I'm able to reach the population that's, you know, for them, for whom it's not very easily accessible to go to. They would have to drive like over an hour to go to a clinic or to a studio for just a half-hour session.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think sometimes what we forget is that there are many people who are in rural communities or in communities
Yes.
where there's not a lot of access, and also thinking about families where it's very difficult for them to get their child who may have a disability or special unique needs into
Right.
a therapy session, to drive, go for an hour. So I love that this is a modality of a way that you can integrate and bring yoga into your PT sessions.
Yes. So
So what would a session look like if you could give us a little visualization of maybe a client that you've worked with? Give
mhm.
us an idea of how you integrate.
So typically, the sessions I give the parents like an idea of what we would be working on during the next session. I send them a quick email of things that they would need, which is another great thing about, you know, incorporating yoga into my telehealth sessions. We don't necessarily need a lot of you know, equipment per se. You can just
Mm-hmm.
use anything that you have around the house, um,
Yeah.
like laundry baskets, step stools, you know, easy things
Mm.
like that,
Mm-hmm.
that you can easily incorporate into the sessions. And then, like, since I have the yoga toolkit, I tell them also to do the red right and the
Mm.
lavender left or
Yes.
something like that. So if they don't necessarily have the wristbands, but I'll tell them to put stickers on their hands. So it's easier for me to instruct. And a lot of the times I do a lot of demo. So they're
Mm.
looking at me and seeing what I'm doing
Yeah.
versus me giving them verbal instructions because for a lot of these populations, the student population that I've worked with, you know, even 5 or 6 words is too many for them to be
Yes.
able to process. And they're
Mm-hmm.
in front of the computer, they're already, you know, getting that sensory, the visual input. And if I add too much of verbal input to that, it just gets too much and I lose them.
Yes.
Um, so a lot of the times I just demonstrate. So I would have this on, and then we do some of the mirroring exercises that
Mm.
you know, I think I learned in the level 2 and
Yes.
in level 1, which was
Mm-hmm.
great. Like, you know, I would have them move along and then do
Yeah.
this, crossing the midline, and they would mirror my activities, and kind of we would go through exercises like that. We go through a lot of warm up imitation songs where I would sing the hokey pokey, put your left, you know, or
Mm.
put your lavender right forward, and you know, something like that. Um,
Yes.
and we would do it. Same thing for the lower extremities, like we would do exercises. So we go through the warm up,
Yeah.
and then typically we go through some like an obstacle course. I would have them set up an obstacle course around their house, and then at each point through the obstacle course, I would say, okay, let's stop and we can do maybe a frog pose, and then I show them I have the like a frog.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I just show it to them right there. And this is another
Mm.
great thing that I love about your cards that you
Yeah.
have in the toolkit. They're just so simple, and you know, not too colorful, so it's not very distracting, not too much
Mm.
you know, overload, while they're, you know, while being anatomically correct, right?
Yeah.
So
'Cause that's something we have to take into consideration when we're working with children with, in particular, a lot of sensory needs or
yes,
that get overwhelmed by too much information and distraction in their environment, or children who have attention difficulties. So yeah, keeping it simple And I love how you're talking about doing an obstacle course as you're teaching the poses, because you're keeping their minds kind of occupied and engaged, and you're giving them
Right.
something playful to do while you're
Mhm.
also weaving in those PT goals that you have in mind in your head, right?
Right. So yeah. So being able to step over, step up and down, and then do a pose, and then I would just say, okay, let's see a frog, and I'll just put this in front, and then they're able to mirror it and do it
Mm-hmm.
without me having to give all the verbal instructions and guiding them through it.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes I even send pictures to the parents, and
Mm-hmm.
they can pull it up on their computer and
Yes.
they use it at the same time. So we are able to use it asynchronously that way, and they are able
Mm-hmm.
to do it as a part of their home program as well in those cases.
Yeah, that's
Which is what I
wonderful.
love about this. They're so versatile and can be used in so many different ways.
And I don't know if you saw, Mallika, I know you use the toolkit a lot, that I added yoga pecs that are the same images as the toolkit for creating individualized practices and for parents to use. So I'm not sure if you saw that. I just shared that on my website. So that's an
That's
exciting
great.
thing to have as a support for parents, to have those visuals at home. So
Yeah,
what is,
that's an awesome tool to have because I know there's quite a few things available on there, but then, like I said, it's just sometimes it's just too much, like too colorful. They're not anatomically correct, and it's
mm-hmm,
confusing, like what you're
yeah,
supposed to do.
absolutely.
So, yeah,
What's some of the
so
feedback that you
that's
get?
great.
What is some of the feedback you get from parents as far as the sessions? Like, I know that we know that one of the best ways for a child to be successful in their development is to have the home involved as well, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful that you have the caregiver that's part of those sessions at home. They get to see what you're doing, and then they get to mirror that at home and practice
Mm-hmm.
that with the child. So what's some feedback, if you don't mind sharing, that you've received from parents in terms of a child's progress in these telehealth sessions that you are providing?
Right. So like you mentioned, Shani, like that's the most important fact, the fact of carryover, which is lost when the child goes to a clinic, where the parent is not able to see what the child is essentially doing during the session. Or for example, when the child goes to school and I
Mm,
do therapy with the child in the school environment, the parent is not a part of it.
yeah.
So that's one of the most important feedbacks that I've received so far is, one of these parents, families that I work with, the child was going to attending a brick and mortar school, but due to whatever reasons, they moved to a virtual school, and then they started receiving all these services via telehealth. And
Mm,
so the parent was like, well, now I finally have an idea what PT actually is, or,
mm,
what you actually do. And she said, okay, and now I know what, how
yeah.
important it is, um, for him to be doing this every day and not just during the half hour that I'm directly working with the child. Because
Yeah. I,
like yeah, like you
I
said,
think that's a shift that we really need to make in terms of the services that we provide to these children, is that the parents get to have more involvement and more capacity to see and know what their child is doing. And then what I love is that the parents are getting that stealth self-regulation themselves, right? They're
yes.
doing the practices of yoga, and the breathing, and they're mirroring that to their children. So they're getting an
Mhm.
opportunity to also absorb some of that practice as well. I know
Yes.
that's something that you're doing with your children at home. I know you practice yoga with your children, and what's so lovely is an offering that I saw during this pandemic that you've been offering online, which is it's called Play Yoga. Is that
Yes, move, play, yoga, and everything. It's
Move,
fun.
Play Yoga and everything? And it's like a private group, and you opened it up to, is it parents of your children's friends?
Yes, mostly, and then yeah, and then they added a few other people who they know and things like that. So yeah, it
Yeah.
grew.
I love that offering, and I'm part of that page, so I get to see all of your wonderful things that you offer, and your Zoom yoga classes, and your mindfulness activities that you're doing with your children. And what I love about that is that you're keeping your children connected to their community, and you're keeping
Mhm.
parents connected to community, because I think this is such a hard time for parents right now, right? I mean, it takes a village as a parent. And I think sometimes just dropping your child off at school and getting a chance to see another adult and have adult conversations with people is so important for parents. And it's a self-regulation tool just in that sense. And I'm sure right now that children are really struggling with this concept and idea of not being able to see their friends. So I think that's just such a beautiful offering that you are sharing with your community. And have you found that parents, since you started that, parents who've never done yoga or whose children haven't done yoga, what has your response been that you've received from that?
I feel like parents are really, amazed at what their children can actually do and how much they like doing it. Like you mentioned, like, they're working or they're doing things without realizing that they're actually doing it, right?
Yeah,
So this is
yeah.
the best part of it. And then, like, it was actually a friend of my child's, of one of my son's friends who actually said, "Oh, this is fun," and then she keeps asking me to do more sections.
Mm.
And there are quite a few kiddos like who have actually asked for, to have more Zoom play dates. They call it Zoom play dates
I
now.
love it. I love it.
And it's awesome. So they like connecting, and we play animal charades, and we go through the yogas, and then we play name that pose and things like that, which is, so much fun, even for
Yeah,
adults. And yeah,
absolutely. I just think that children just have a natural love for yoga.
they do.
There's a natural draw to it. There's a natural love. And yes, there are some children where it takes a little bit more time for them to be open to it. And we have to
Mhm.
learn the strategies and tools and the patience that it takes to help them to build trust and be willing to receive. But I find that there is just this draw to it. And I think that really the reason for it is because it allows children to play. It lets them just connect with their imagination.
Mhm.
It's non-competitive, and they're moving and they're breathing, and we know this is just so important for our children to be doing this. So I love that you're
And
offering that, because we know there's a lot of kids, this is a big struggle right now. They've got the online learning and they're in front of the screens because parents are
mhm.
exhausted.
I know.
so so to get a little bit of this movement and playful experience, and then what's so wonderful also is that you have the families practicing as well.
Right. And yeah, I wish I could do it a little bit more. I'm hoping to be able to do more over summer. It's just the end of the school year is just such a busy time with a lot of other IEP things and kids.
Yeah, you're very busy because you're juggling being a mama at home with your kids, and also the challenge of getting your work done. What are some things you're doing, Mallika, to help yourself kind of stay self-regulated and kind of care for yourself during this time?
Well, I just, yeah, like I keep repeating to myself that it's okay. I did the best. Like you have said this in the past, and that's where I, heard it for the first time. And it was,
Mm,
yeah, okay. So I keep repeating to myself, okay, I did the best I could today. Today was,
yeah.
I put in my best, and tomorrow is a new day. And
Yeah, that's all we
sometimes
can do, isn't it? We can't
it's,
do, that's all we can do. It's just
no,
the best that we can do. And especially in circumstance, this is an unprecedented time.
right, right,
And there are so many emotions. Our nervous systems
hmm
are in this kind of, really activated place. And I just hope that parents are having compassion for themselves, because there's a lot of pressure on them right now in so many
right.
ways. And so my heart is just going out there to parents. So I just really, it filled my heart to see your play yoga that you are sharing with your community, because I think that's just that's a light in their day, probably just getting
Oh,
to experience that. And that's such a gift that you're offering to the children, and then also to your own children, for them to
mhm.
get to see the faces on the other side and connect with their friends. So tell me a little bit about your Physi-Asanas. That's your business. What do you
Mm,
offer through that? And I'm going to be sure when we are done with our conversation that I share a link to whatever resources I can for people to be able to access you and get in touch with you. But what is that business, and what are you sharing through your Physi-Asanas?
So, like the name says, Physi-Asanas is about bringing, the world of yoga and therapy, in a
Mm-hmm.
more in a more presentable and more achievable way for these children, because like you mentioned, they frequently struggle with having so many expectations put on them by their parents, by their teachers, by uh, peer pressure, and so many other things on so many different levels.
Yeah.
So the idea is to let them experience success, through doing things that they can easily access.
Yeah.
Another thing that I always think about that you say is, can you meet every need of every child out there? No, but you can possibly meet, one need of, you know, uh, every child out there. And,
Yeah.
that's kind of been my intention behind starting this business, is to kind of try to share a little bit of what I have learned,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of of this with the families, more so with the parents also, not just working with the child, but also with the whole family,
Yes.
helping them with what they can. Um,
Because that's just really the absolute foundation, is that the families can be involved, and that they're
right.
part of that process,
Mhm.
right? And I think it just also helps so much with them getting to have moments of peace together, and
Right.
getting to connect. And I think it's building their relationships as well.
Right. And so the idea is just to do it in a more fun way that's more accessible to, more children, more families, so they can have peer groups to interact with and have
Mm,
these fun sessions where they are either outdoors, going through some games that incorporate some gross motor movement, as well as the self-regulation parts, building in those into the group play sessions,
yeah.
um, as
Hmm.
well as for children who are on the spectrum, like peer participation is so huge, and the families always struggle to have even play dates, like simple things like play dates
Yeah,
that every child should have, friends to play with.
absolutely.
So being able to just try and meet that need, like just giving them a group of friends that they can uh,
Mm, hmm.
participate in some fun things that they
And
can
what's so
also.
beautiful about yoga, when you're talking about bringing in inclusion, right? And bringing
Yes.
in those social skills for children with autism, which is just so important. And I don't think that we focus enough on the importance of trying to get children connected with their community and with peers,
Right.
is that you don't even have to use a lot of verbal language, and they don't have to be
No.
able to speak, right? There's communication
Mhm.
that's happening through their movement, through their breathing, through play.
Right.
It's non-competitive, so they get to just show up how they are. And so I just think the fusion of the practice of yoga and games together and play together with children with autism and their peers is just such a beautiful match, and a
It
beautiful way
is, and
to
it's
bring that
so holistic.
socialization.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, like, you just nailed it on the head. It's like, it's so holistic, working on so many different aspects at the same time
Hmm.
without, putting all those expectations on them.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to ask, you went through both the level 1 and level 2 training. So you're a 95-hour certified children's yoga teacher through Asanas for Autism and Special Needs. And I'm so grateful to have you as part of the faculty for the level 2 and the level 3. We haven't done the level
It
3
was
yet, but
breaking.
oh, did I break up? Can you hear me?
Yes, I couldn't hear
Okay.
you for a
A
second there,
moment.
for a few
Okay.
seconds there.
Uh, so
But that's
I was saying I'm grateful to have you as our resident PT. Am I still there?
no, yes, I can
um,
hear you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
okay. So what I would love to know is, what is your biggest takeaway from your training? With Asanas for Autism and Special Needs. What would you say is your biggest takeaway from that training?
So there's just so many, so many things that I learned from that. But I would like to talk about a couple of things that come to my mind the most is like how adaptable, how adaptable yoga is. Like it can
Mm,
meet the need of any population, like, right from a year old or even a younger baby to all the way to like maybe a 99-year-old, or whatever the age may be, whatever the cognitive abilities may be, whatever the physical abilities may be. It's just so adaptable, and it can be so easily modified to meet the need and to address the challenges for every single person within that such a huge spectrum, right? And
yeah.
also at the same time hitting and touching and helping with every so many different areas, like it being so holistic,
I love
and
that.
just being so accessible, like with respect to materials, with respect to you don't need a whole lot to just do these um to do yoga, right?
Yeah,
Anything.
yeah. Love it.
That's the part. That's my biggest takeaway. And then the other biggest takeaway is, for me has been the business part of the business module that you covered in the level 2.
Mm.
For me, that was a major, breakthrough, like a moment, like an aha moment, because we don't learn a whole lot of it in PT school.
Yes.
Um, and so it was great to kind of see what it takes, or how little it takes, or how easy it is to kind of set up, as long as you know the steps that go into it. And um
Yeah. And then we do a lot of manifesting, don't we? There's
yes,
a lot of that, a lot of envisioning
exactly.
and meditation and manifesting, and which I
Mhm.
think is so important. We keep coming back to the dream, and we keep coming back to our truth, and
Yes,
keep reminding ourselves of what our heart is longing for. And because we know there are obstacles that come into our way, right, in our life, and we might have this dream and this heart's desire, and then something happens, and rather than letting
yes.
ourselves focus on all of those things, we try to come back to it, kind of move in the direction of, right? So um
So true. So
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yes. So that was another huge takeaway, like, the journaling part, kind of self-reflecting, kind of like the way you made us go through, like, our own thoughts, and kind of identifying our own challenges that we're facing, and then helping us to take baby steps, to kind of overcome those. And
Mm,
for me, it's a huge struggle, or it takes a lot of energy to kind of stand in front of people and talk.
mm.
But but
Yeah.
thanks to you, I realized that I love teaching, and it's kind of
Mm,
I'm so passionate about it that once I start talking, or once I'm into that teaching mode, then I kind of forget who's there in front of me, and then it's
yeah.
just
And
so that's
isn't that really
so helpful.
what dharma is? If we're doing our heart's
Yes.
work, then it's just comes naturally from
Mhm.
us, right? And I do believe that this is absolutely your heart's work, Mallika. I mean, just even it's been so nice to even get to watch you share your classes and get to see that. And I take great joy in being able to see that. So I want to ask you last question before we end. I would love
Mhm.
to hear, what do you envision for your future? And I know this is a funny time for me to be asking this question because we're in the middle of a
Mhm.
pandemic, but I think it's really important for us to still continue to stay connected to our dreams and to our hearts. And we know that there are obstacles, little obstacles and big obstacles that can happen, but we still want to kind of keep our eye on and our heart moving in that direction. It's kind of continuing to think about what we see for our futures. And so what, if you had no limitations, if you didn't have, all of those what ifs or those types of things, what are you visualizing for the future with the work that you do?
So my main intention is um, like just kind of trying spreading, spreading this, uh, spreading this knowledge, or have in this area of yoga and physical therapy, to as many people, so I could help as many families. Because when one person is affected, it's the whole family that's affected. The
Yeah.
whole family dynamics changes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
just trying to share this with find a way to share this with as many people as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is like a huge need back in India, where there are so many children and students that could benefit from yoga, with especially in the area of special needs.
Yes.
So that's my like biggest vision. I don't know when
I love it.
it would if when or if or when it would be achievable, but it would be to bring it back
Yeah.
to India in the form where it's more accessible to the population that really needs it. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
That both the children and the parents, right? The parents also need
Yes.
that support and those services in India. So I love that. I was hoping you would share that because I see it and I can visualize you offering that and sharing that. Um, and I just think that you're doing wonderful work. And I'm so happy to, like I said, have you as part of the faculty and um, just to get to know you and to have the honor of being connected with you, Mallika. I think you're just wonderful, um, and I'm going to share all the information below. So I will link to your Facebook page, and you have a website as well, correct?
I do, yes.
You do. Okay. And so I'll share Mallika's information. And so if anyone wants to get in contact with her, she's in San Diego, California. So um, she's getting to enjoy the lovely weather that we have in San Diego right now as well. So thank goodness for that, right?
Yes. Thank
And
you, Shawnee. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
thank you. Thank you for taking the time to share with us. And we'll be seeing you in the level 2 training. So you'll be leading the anatomy, and the level 2 training is starting in June, June 12th. So we have people already signing up for that. And the level 1 just sold out, but I did open up 4 more spots for the level 1 that starts on May 15th through 24th. So if there's anyone that wants to get in on that, do it soon, because it'll be, those 4 spots will be gone quickly. And then we have a level 3 yoga therapy for youth training that there's a faculty that's part of it. It's a 100-hour training, but it's all going to be online. That's exciting. So we'll get to reach more people. And Mallika is also the faculty for that as well. And that is going to be in October through January. And we don't have all the details yet. So, but just want to put that out there. Keep an eye out on Yoga Therapy for Youth page. I will put links also to the Asanas for Autism Special Needs trainings and the Yoga Therapy for Youth website, so people can access that. So Mallika, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you in person, and giving you a hug in person when we can all come together. Sometime we'll get together for some coffee and connect. So love to you, love to your family.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
See you soon. Yes. Looking forward to the
Me,
level 3 being part of it. Thank
me
you.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.